So first off, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Um, so who is the trans person that's in your life?
It is my younger sister. They are a trans identified female.
And how old is your sister?
Um, they're 15 right now.
Hmm. My brother's 16. We've got like a 7-year age gap, and I swear it's like talking to aliens sometimes. I don't understand what he's talking about, like ever.
Yeah, I don't know. They're the only one exposed to TikTok. I never used it, so I don't know if that anything to do with it.
If you don't mind me asking, how big is the age gap?
So I'm 21. So it's about 6 years. I mean, they're turning 16 really soon. It's like 6 or 5 years. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we're pretty similar situation. And when did your sister start identifying as trans?
It was at least to me, it was 2021. So about like I want to say when they were probably 12.
That is really young. Okay. And then that was when schooling and everything was online. People weren't in person yet.
That was when people were starting to come back. I was in physical college at the time, but we were still masked up.
Yeah, for me, I think we started going back to in-person schooling in the fall semester, but it was still people still weren't going out as much. Everyone was very much afraid of being in person, at least in Atlanta. But I definitely think that like over the pandemic, people were online a lot more. Like I was definitely using Discord a lot more than I was prior to COVID. Do you think that, like increased internet usage played a role in her changing her mind on being a girl?
I absolutely think that. I really do absolutely think that. Because I mean that's all they would spend their time on. I mean, so did I. I mean, I was chronically online too. Because I mean, you know, what else am I gonna do?
I mean, that's true. I mean, it wasn't like
That's
there
my
was much of an option, but I think that at least with younger people, I don't know about you, but when I was in middle school, it was awful. I was really embarrassing and cringe, and I'm really glad that I didn't have a cell phone because there's no proof of how bad I used to dress or how awkward I was. These days, today's kids, they have social media, and I swear I sound like a boomer when I talk about it. But like, they will have proof of how cringe and awkward they were that will last forever. The only proof anyone has of me is my mom. And
I really didn't think about it in that way. Like you pretty much have a catalog of your entire life if you've had a phone for so long. It's kind of easily accessible like that. And
well, they always say that like the internet is permanent and it's also impermanent. So we have these trends that cycle through super fast, but also everything. I've had a Tumblr since I was like 11, and so there's this huge online diary of who I was over the years. And I can scroll all the way back to my first post where I'm like complaining about how Yuri on Ice fan fiction that was an AU of Revolutionary Girl Utena was lesbian appropriation or something equally stupid. Like the difference, of course, is that my face isn't on my Tumblr and it is on TikTok. And I think that TikTok also tends to be a lot more performative and the trends move a lot faster. I'm just curious, has she followed any of the other TikTok trends? I know like they've had haircuts and aesthetics and all that stuff kind of flash through pretty quick.
they they follow certain TikTok trends. Kind of like I don't know how to put it. Like they've always been following the I guess quote unquote contrarian ones. Um, in that like they were TikTok trends, but like they weren't like the forefront ones. They were just kind of like the um I don't know. They're huge like anime fans, huge like Persona fans, huge like things like that. Um, and those are the kind of trends.
So like counterculture, nerd type stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Kind of Crow nerd type stuff.
Interesting, because I do feel like there's also a pretty huge overlap with people who are nerdier, who are kind of on the outcast, who tend to identify as some sort of queer. How you said she's been identifying this way for a decent amount of time. How has that impacted your relationship with her?
Even in 2021, I was like, I was like 12, seems to be really young to be like identifying like this. So I was, you know, when they brought up the idea to me, Um, I, I was like, are you, you really sure? Like, you want to like, be identifying as this? Like, are you sure? Like this is the choice you made. But they weren't having any of that. They really didn't have any of that at all. They just started, shouting that they hate me, they hate me, they hate me all over again. Um, and ever since then, I kind of realized that like if I kind of object anyway or bring up any like, like point of concern, this is going to be shot down. Um, and it's like, I kind of have to be a little distant from them in a way, but also, I don't know, it's weird with them. Um,
Were you guys close prior to this?
um, I'd say we were close, yeah. Because at least I thought we were getting closer. At least, I mean, I do think that we were because they would come to me for some things. I wasn't, I don't know. I probably wasn't the best younger brother. I don't think I was, but then like, as we both started to get older, we got closer. Um, because I know that there was one day when like I came into the room, I noticed they had self-harmed, like they had cuts over their leg, and I was like the first one to see that. Um, and I was always kind of the person to check up on them to see how they were doing throughout the day.
And what about how this has affected your family as a whole? I know that even with smaller things like how I cut my hair as a teenager, small things that make a big ripple effect that would affect not just me and my mom or me and my dad, but how everybody in the family was getting along. Because if there's some kind of weird strain between parents, then your sibling notices it, or if two siblings are fighting, the parents notice it.
Yeah, so I think the biggest impact was probably between the extended family. Um, because like my mom and dad were skeptical too, but like I guess I don't know, they kind of felt like they had to accept their identity choice because, well, they attempted suicide a few times. Um, and my extended family, like, we're all Democrats, but they were skeptical basically. Um, and my family is kind of like distanced themselves from them because of that. It's not like we're on bad terms, but it's like things are definitely like kind of weird between us now. We don't engage in the same way with our extended family that we used to when this all started.
So is it kind of like because of the awareness of your sister's mental health, nobody really wants to broach the topic? Is it like kind of like walking on ice, just trying to make sure that nothing gets triggered, there's no kind of problem?
That's exactly like that's what I think is going on. Like I really do think that's what's going on. Um, because I my dad was always like a really like skeptical person. He doesn't like, you know, he won't like charge into things and like fully agree with it. He will like take a step back and like look over everything. Um, but I mean, I really do think that he kind of just started accepting this because it like all those like suicide attempts like really like broke him in a way. I really do get that feeling. But
Do you get the sense that this was kind of driven by a rejection of her sexuality or more of a peer pressure type thing, or not peer pressure, but catching on to the trend of her peers or just an escape from misogyny? Do you have any idea like what kind of led her to choosing this besides general mental health issues?
I think she is a lesbian. Um, I think she is. But I I think it could be really a mix of all those things, to be honest with you. Um, because I know they always like had kind of like, you know, self-image issues. Um, and I think there was definitely a little bit of shame, like before they started identifying, like a shame of their sexuality as well. Um, and I also think, I think they would be a pretty good fit for the Yowie pipeline. I think they would, because that is kind of like their fixation. I've noticed. Because I still talk to them. I still like spend time with them, and I think they have like a huge like fixation on like yaoi culture, driven by TikTok trends and just in general internet trends. but it's hard to pinpoint one thing.
Yeah, I feel like when it comes to transidentified males, it's a little bit easier to just say it's either autogynephilia or
Yeah.
homosexuality. With girls, I've noticed that there's definitely a lot of overlapping factors, especially when it comes to fandom and being online. Because growing up, fan fiction was still a fringe thing. Fandom was still very much, it was there, but it definitely wasn't like it is today.
Yeah.
So there was, a definite divide. And now today, so many kids are getting into fan fiction and fandom and yaoi and sexually explicit materials, that kind of stuff, really, really young.
Really concerningly
And
early.
yeah, and it's interesting because there's a social side to it too that wasn't there when I was younger either. I mean, I read fan fiction during class, but I definitely wasn't making friends with every single person online or talking about
Mhm.
my gay ships or whatever.
It wasn't a culture per se. I mean, it was, but it wasn't like a. I feel as though it really wasn't a culture, but like it kind of is now. Like it's a community in a way, whereas it was just the way I see it was just a thing. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong about that. I didn't engage in fan fiction until I was, like, I guess around my age now, actually. But
I think like there's always been like a culture obviously, but there's a difference between like the guys who like made their own websites and like were really on because like you had to have internet intelligence. You had to put in a lot of effort to connect and to do all those things. I didn't get to go to my first convention till I was like 16, didn't get my first phone to 13. There was a lot more living in your real life day to day. Going outside, riding your bike, going to the library, meeting people in person. I don't think I had pen pals, did not have internet friends until I hit my teen years. And that's definitely when all the gender stuff started picking up.
yeah, yeah, I got my first phone at like 10. But I think I didn't really like engage in online community until I made my Discord, which is like I think 2016. So I made mine. I think you make a really good point that like in the days of old, there definitely required some sweat equity just to even like get online. Like aside from playing Roblox and Minecraft, that was my internet engagement.
And I definitely think, well, I'm actually curious. It sounds like your family would be accepting of having a lesbian daughter, but societally, the pressure to conform and look and act a certain way is playing a role in her decision to not identify as female.
I am openly bisexual to them. Um, and they well, they're a little less understanding of bisexual, but they're very understanding of like gay and lesbian. They are. They've always have been. They were really big on legalizing gay marriage. They were always very progressive. Um, and in fact, like it was actually like my dad was the one who put in the most effort to try to make her comfortable with being a lesbian. Um, like he was really on top of that. He was really I don't know. So I do think it's like I think it has to be a societal thing. I don't know. Because they got a phone really early, like really early. And then TikTok just kind of came, and then just like internet fixation happened. I feel as though it was really a perfect storm.
Yeah, I'm definitely hearing that kind of it's like this like the just all the different things adding up at the same time led to this explosion in the population of girls identifying as trans. What I'm curious about is I know that most trans-identified females make up a large majority of those getting testosterone, getting surgeries. There's actually a very small percentage of trans-identified males getting surgeries. It's mostly the girls, and it's a lot of young teenagers and young adult girls. Is your sister taking any kind of hormones or on a plan for surgery, or is it just social transition?
In 3 months, they're getting injections for testosterone. I think that's the
And
plan.
your parents are okay with
And I
that? They're
don't.
supportive of taking hormones?
I I guess so.
Do you think they're aware of all the harm that can come from taking testosterone at a young age?
I was trying to explain it to my dad, but then like he kind of claims that he looked into some of the side effects and claims that my sibling knows some of the side effects. But I mentioned the cast review and the WPATH files to him, and I mean, I I don't doubt that maybe he's read this, but he's just I don't know. That's just why like it'd be unusual for him to have not. It's kind of what I'm thinking about because I know he would like, but I feel like he is just kind of pressured to not question it. I don't know.
Like the fear of losing his daughter is enough to go ahead and say, fine, I don't agree with this, but I'll ignore it. I'll go ahead and support it as long as you're alive and here.
That's really what I think is happening because just it was like 4 suicide attempts, and it really scared him because like you know rushing her to the ER and just it put a lot on him because because one of his biggest regrets was when his friend years and years ago committed suicide, and he's talked to me about how he can really never forgive himself for that.
I can imagine how that kind of experience would definitely influence a parent into supporting using testosterone. I see it. I understand the thought process. I just feel, especially since you suspect that she might be a lesbian, I just really looking into all the health detriments that come from testosterone use and the fact that so many young people end up thinking it through better when they hit their 20s, their early 20s, 20, 21, 23, whatever. I feel like there's got to be that fear there that, in a couple years, she'll be able to look back and think that she made a mistake or be dealing with extra health detriments on top of the mental health issue, or her mental health issues might, in fact, just not be, might get worse because of the minority stress model. A lot of gender clinics, a lot of gender therapists, they all seem to focus on, well, if we treat the gender dysphoria first, then all the anxiety, depression, everything else, that had to be related to the gender dysphoria, and therefore it'll all go away. But then if you're only focusing on the dysphoria side of it, then the depression, anxiety, all that can get worse. And then being in that state of being a trans identified person is really hard to back out of. Detransitioners get treated like shit. It definitely just seems like a frustrating situation to be in, and I'm sorry that you guys are dealing with that.
I appreciate the kind words, and it's yeah, much as I read through like r/d trans, I kind of maybe just scroll through Reddit to get my information. Maybe not the best source sometimes, but hey, I mean it's real people most of the time. Um, yeah, it's bad on r/d trans. The, all the social rejection they face, and like nobody, I don't know. And like you said about the sexuality, you know, it, I guess it's not the current trend to identify as lesbian right now. It's like, and it's also like the kind of internalized misogyny is what I imagine a lot of that to be too. And I definitely think they have a lot of it from how I engage with them. And also just like seeing my friend who is also a lesbian kind of almost fall into this pit as well, and she explained like, hey, wait a second, and like you know like she felt disconnected from her identity as well, like being a woman. And it's like, she realized like, wait a minute, like I'm being kind of pushed down this pipeline right here because of misogyny. And I think my sibling is definitely a victim of that.
See, what's interesting is if you look back through a lot of older books, nonfiction, and essays and whatnot from the sex wars period of feminism, which obviously it's dry reading and it's not something that I would be like, here, teenager, read this book. But when you look back through those type of writings, you'll see the same kind of arguments of, well, lesbian is less of a woman. It's being a lesbian is being separate from being a woman because she's viewed as being more masculine. She's viewed as being a failed woman or a half man. There's these kind of thoughts that you can trace the same kind of viewpoints to today. Because yeah, now no one's saying it outright that, a lesbian is a failed woman or a failed, half man, but they're definitely implying it, especially with all the pressure online for example, masculine or butch lesbians to trans out. Go try testosterone, like it's some kind of nothing different than dyeing your hair or cutting it. There's a very real trivialization of using hormones and binders and surgeries and the impact it has on your body added to the fashion of, well, lesbians are like the the least liked part of the community right now because we're all assumed to be turfs and bad guys, which fair enough. I just don't think that's necessarily the worst thing in the world to be.
I mean, of course, I'm not gonna fully know these things. I am a guy. I just like I try my best knowing from some of my friends. I try to know like what I can know. And then I scroll through r/, real lesbians, and I kind of die inside just a little bit. Just because there's like where are the lesbians? I don't know where they're at. I don't see them on here. Cause do you see them on there? Cause I don't. Like where I don't see a singular one on here. And also the whole like yaoi pipeline. It's just this like this fixation on just like you know just like masculine portrayal and it's like masculine focus. Uh,
And it's not even like a real portrayal of guys, because the guys they have in yaoi, that's female presented female fantasy of what a guy could be. I don't think any of those people who like write or like are read yaoi and are like really really into it have actually talked to a guy in real life.
well, you could talk to me. I don't know. Like I'm right. I am a guy. Hi, I could like I'm doing a whole project right now on masculine presentation in movies. I could tell you a few things about the portrayal of men, and yaoi is a huge outlier because it's not masculine portrayal in a weird way. I mean, it is, but it's like just weird fantasy idea. It's I don't know.
No, I want to hear what you have to say about yaoi. I feel like you've got some interesting thoughts on it.
So I'm gonna compare it to when I do a lot of like for fun research on furry porn culture as well. So like this is a male centric thing right here. Um, because I like was in a group like I mean I almost fell into that pipeline, the whole like furry porn addiction pipeline. I really did. Because I mean porn addiction's so normalized in men, but that's a whole separate topic. And I almost fell in that pipeline, so I have a little bit of experience in this, and it's like you know, like the whole femboys thing and the whole like, fetishization of like features like having quote unquote a big ass or big thighs. I'm like, this isn't like male stuff. Like male fat distribution doesn't even work like that. Like if a male has big thighs, he also has like stomach fat as well. I mean, but then like they just completely ignore like male anatomy to present like, this stuff that's really just an objectification of woman just transposed on a man because it's easier to respect a man, and I feel as though like this yaoi fetishization is almost maybe like an inverse of that. It's like you're taking like you know stereotypical features like of like a fetishization of woman and transposing it on a male figure because you've been trained to respect men more than you've been trained to respect women. But it's all like it all relates to just I think how we said in the beginning like this like hypersexual fixation online. Um, but that's kind of what I get out of it. I think it's just like it relates to like like you can't bear the thought of imagining a woman, but you're also like porn addicted or you're a victim of like a hypersexual culture. Um, so like you can transpose like your fantasized like things like onto a male figure because in porn you don't humanize the woman, but you can easily humanize the man.
It's kind of interesting to compare that with Omegaverse, which sometimes I hate that I've been on the internet so long that I know enough about this. But I noticed in general, like when I first started reading, if I go back and read my old stuff that I had bookmarked from way back when I was like in high school, and it was like a gay ship, they would write them like people. There'd be a good focus on plot, on story, and yeah, there'd be sex scenes, but it wouldn't be written like thinly disguised heterosexual porn. And that's what I've noticed recently, especially with like the rise of Omegaverse. It used to be this niche thing that you really didn't see often, and now it's just like excuse to write misogyny and heterosexuality, but with two guy characters. And it's like you're doing yaoi wrong.
I'm not familiar with Omegaverse.
Good.
I really I'm
Don't do it.
bad. No, like the only like oh God, the only like culture like I'm familiar with because I started like researching out of morbid curiosity is Yarrow Shadow Scale and the game known as Changed. If you want some like good stuff on furry porn, just look up Changed and clear your internet history afterwards. It's kind of a
I don't want to learn more.
okay, that's good because I've seen stuff that I cannot unsee. Um, and it's like that's what it's like now I play. I'm like, oh man, like this would be a great example for a video, but I'm not sure who I could convince to look at this.
I did my one video on the furries, and I just don't think somebody posted me on a furry Reddit, and they were complaining and they were crying that I was being mean and that I was painting them all as sexual deviants, and it was like, well,
I mean, well, like I'm sorry, like when you get into quote unquote latex furry transformation fetish, I think we have a problem. That's what we call a problem. That's not normal. Stop. Just stop. That's like, but in the whole game, right? And I say this as an example because like the main character, right, is clearly codified as a femboy. And his original age was 16. Go figure. And it's it's like, oh, but he's retconned to 23 now. But like all the scenes in the game, it's like it's very clear that it's just like these feminine features being like transposed onto a male figure, clearly in like a porn aidled way. Um, it's like and the game also has a little bit of like autogynephilia in it, like when he gets transformed and now suddenly he is a woman, and the only way you could tell that it's a woman is that if he has giant breasts because it's furries. You can't tell with the face.
it's really interesting how many kinks end up overlapping in like a really disturbing way. Like the sissy hypno porn thing. I listened to a podcast on it. I've heard of other people talking about it. I've been putting it off forever because it sounds like a bad time. I've seen the forced feminization thing. I've seen the bimbofication. I've seen so many kinks that basically just come down to degrading men and making them like women in some kind of way because to be woman is to be degraded. And it's
Be fucked is to be female. Whatever he said. I don't remember what the quote exactly
close
was.
enough. I know close enough. It's interesting how that kind of overlaps though, because with like you mentioned, porn addiction is pretty damn normalized now. I know that when I was in school, it was not joked about or spoken about so openly, and if somebody did, they were like the weird kid. It wasn't like a common thing, you know? And now it's
Oh, no, exactly. Yeah.
yeah, like have you noticed that too, that like guys have gotten a lot more openly hostile and sexualized and just kind of mean to women?
Yeah, yeah, I know. I saw this like, my dad was like, guys, they'll never talk about jacking off. They'll like hide the fact, but we all do it. Like that's what I was taught, right? Like guys, they don't talk about this stuff. But no, that's not true. We only talk about this stuff. That's what we did in high school. And then like now, like as I like now I'm in college. I live with three other guys who are cool. Um, and I know some fraternity members as well. Not in a fraternity. The way to just casually like refer to any woman as bitch, like when they're going to a party, like their first concern is how many bitches are there. You know what I mean? Or if there's going to be any bitches showing up. And just there's also this like kind of like normalization of like quote unquote jokes that are just kind of like like jokes about men hating women, but like, is it really a joke? Is there a little bit of stochastic terrorism going on here? You know what I mean? It is really like normalized just to make kind of like quote unquote jokes like that among men.
Do you think that like being bisexual kind of gives you a different perspective on this than with just regular heterosexual guys?
Um, yeah, because I mean, I've it's hard to say really. I mean, like a lot of my opinions are actually formed because of a bad experience I had with a guy who I guess he kind of thought he was bisexual, but he was really just but because like what he did to me basically, um, without like going to my whole personal life and like whole story right here, is that like I like did a lot of reminiscing about what he did to me because like he really focused on quote unquote my big thighs or quote unquote my big ass. Like those are things he would say to me. And like one of the last things he ever said to me was, "I'm sorry I objectified you," but the way he objectified me was misogynistic. he was taking his porn addicted fantasy of what a woman is and putting it on me because he could just imagine me as a woman with my figure. And that really stuck with me. I'm like, how does that happen? Like, how does a guy get objectified in a way that requires misogyny?
I'm curious, how did you end up peaking on the trans issue, like coming to being gender critical?
The person who invited me to the server, uh, tomato, yeah, tomato. She's the one who, um, because I got really close to her, like after the guy had done that to me. I mean, that situation is also partly my fault with him, but like it was me getting to realize I was kind of fucked up, and me kind of like trying growing, like from that, and because of that situation, I was a lot more skeptical of things like this. I really was, and I think it was just like slowly seeing because the way that Tomato would explain things, that she would explain things, right? Like she would always back it up with sources. And me being an English major who has to back everything up with MLA, I was like, oh shit. And I would look at the sources myself. I would look up things kind of on my own. And I saw her because I was there with her. When she was considering that she could she might want to identify as a man, and she she went all around and say wait a minute, no, I'm just a victim of misogyny. So I got I was really really fortunate to see this kind of someone almost falling into that pipeline, but then realizing something, and I think that's what made me peak, because I was yo, this is some crazy shit right here. How come no one's talking about this? Well, you know, now I know why no one's talking about it.
That's one of the reasons why I like to have sources and statistics that everyone else can check too, because I feel like, on one hand, people do use statistics, but they rely on you not knowing how to interpret it yourself or just getting dazzled by the numbers. Hence that grossly misquoted lesbians are super abusive study, or the trans people die before 35 study. If you actually read them, that's not at all what they say. Or on the other hand, people just go based on emotion, and it's like, well, it feels right to be nice, and so I will not think this through any deeper. And then you have people who actually do look at the facts and actually do look at the numbers and the experiences. And hey, if you listen to trans people and you do your actual research, I think it's pretty normal to come to the conclusion of, this is suspicious.
Yeah, there's again, I'm a guy. I have limited perspectives on a lot of things because I just don't have the experiences that women have. But I just started reading. I started reading that hang on a second, this hypersexual first of all I read Arshas becoming orgasmic, so I was like, okay, so the whole hypersexual woman fantasy is just not true. That all porn addicted guys seem to do and write in their fucking fan fictions, and it's just I do some weird research, man. Fantasy. And then I look at r/d trans, and it's okay, people are shunned against this. Why are people shunned against this? And then I go to I look at male to female groups, and then I stop looking at male to female groups, because then I realize just because those groups are horrifying most of the time, and they're all sexually charged, and I'm like, hang on a second, why is it all sexually charged like this? I don't know. There's a lot of I probably don't read enough studies as I should. I mostly just read a lot of stories that people tell. Um, and also it's kind of weird that for my project, as I was talking about all that these traits transposed onto a person thing. That all stems from a Laura Mulvey, actually, a 1975 essay called Visual Pleasure in Narrative Cinema, where she talked about just that'd be a whole rabbit hole to get into, but that's it's just weird way of looking at things that I've kind of grown to, is hang on a second, if she argues that Hollywood films are made in a way where the guy is supposed to imagine himself in the role of the main male character who dominates the passive female character, that's interesting, because I see this kind of transposing yourself or aspects onto another figure thing going on too. That's really where a lot of my line of thinking comes from.
I think it kind of overlaps with the transhumanism theory, which I haven't really covered on the channel yet, because sometimes you get so deep into this rabbit hole that you sound insane trying to talk about it to anyone else. And that is what transhumanism is if I try to explain that concept and the link to transgenderism to someone who's not already read up on the topic. It's like, I promise I'm normal. Anyway, the idea of, we spent so much time online that people have like a separation from their bodies. Like, I live in my body. I am my body. It's not like I'm piloting a mecha. I am my body. So there's no way I can be in the wrong body because I am my body. Very simple. But when we have these online personas and we spend so much time getting to know people just kind of brain to brain, interacting in these spaces that are entirely intellectual, and a lot of people aren't physical, they're not going outside, they're not trying new things, they're not living in their body, it makes it very easy to kind of imprint on fictional characters or fictional personas, as you've mentioned. Like, if you're not connected to what your body is, if you're not feeling, if you're not going outside and feeling the air and exercising and touching grass, then it's really easy to kind of separate and view
Yeah.
yourself as like an avatar that you can just, oh, I don't want my breasts, I can switch them out and have a male chest, which adds to the trivialization of the surgeries and hormone treatments. And it's like, that's not how your body works.
No, you can't. You can't like you can't change your Minecraft skin. You know what I mean? Like you can't. Like, I know like you can't just you can't just change yourself in the same way that I can change my profile picture on Discord right now to not be oddish. Um, and it's like yeah. I mean, it's a really good point that like we live like in an intellectual space. And it's really easy to get disconnected from our bodies and like how we are our bodies, and definitely like COVID really didn't help with this. Um, I know my friend, she has a lot of like theories about how especially also easy for women to become like disconnected like from their bodies, and those are like that's where a lot of like my opinions on that came from too, is like listening to her. Um, so I mean, it was mostly just like I had like that's really where all my opinions came from. It's like I was just fortunate to see someone almost fall into the pipeline, but then like did her own research.
Well, on that note, I did want to ask, what advice would you have for someone who's in a similar situation? They have a sibling who's identifying as trans, is going down this path, and they don't really know how to approach it.
I I wish I had an answer for that, because like I don't know what to do most of the time, to be honest. I don't know if I've ever felt more hopeless. Because I really wish I have a lot of regrets. I wish there was something I could have done, or I wish I could have known the right thing to say, but I didn't peak until like now, and I wasn't aware of these issues until now, and I feel like it's too late. Um, I because I feel like I'm worried that if I try to like intervene in any way, I'm just going to become separated from my whole family, and I don't want that. I still love them. I still love my sister, but I don't know. I think I will say what I've done so far for myself. I mean, that's maybe a selfish way of looking at it, but I have a community of people like now that I'm like on my own, like at college. Like I have my own friends now. I have my own group. I have that one friend of mine I keep talking on and on about. Like I have my own circle of people now that I can trust to, and a lot of those people also like, have also peaked. Some of them haven't. Some of them were at least skeptical. But it doesn't matter if they have peaked or have not. Um, and also I just probably put a lot of focus onto my own life as well. I'm currently trying to start a men's mental health club on my campus. I'm engaged in my project. I don't know. I come to realize that actually this is something I realized in my classroom management class. Like I've come to realize that the only person I can control is myself. I can only influence other people, and like I can't spend my time trying to control her. I can't, even though I really wish I could. It's something like I like severe like anxious attachment to her. Like it was really bad. And I still do sometimes, but it's like I kind of have to accept the fact that I I could be there for them if they need me to, because I know they'll come to me about some things, and just if I find opportunities, like try to hopefully stray them towards the path of peaking. But I it was mostly just me realizing that I can only control myself, and that the best thing I can do with these feelings is to improve my own life, or like improve the lives of others around me.
Well, that is pretty good advice. I mean, it takes a lot of a lot of introspection to come to that point of realizing all you can do is control what you can do and support those you love. But I wanted to say thank you so much for doing an interview with me, 'cause this is a lot of interesting topics. I know the point was to focus on having a trans person in the family, but I'm interested in your research. That that was an interesting topic.
Yeah, I kind of like I sound like a madman most of the time when it's like that's it's like, and then he started talking about furry porn all of a sudden. It's just fascinating because like I'm sorry, but what the fuck is wrong with y'all? Um,
That's what I think whenever I turn on my computer.
it's like open up my phone. What the fuck is wrong with y'all? Well, yeah, I wish I had an answer, but I just don't right now. Maybe in a few months I'll have an answer. I don't know.
Well, maybe the viewers will have some answers for you in the comments when this one goes up. We'll have to see.
Maybe. Yeah, I hope so.